Alpha-gal syndrome was something that was once extremely rare in this country. That is a fact, but it is becoming more and more common as more people develop an allergy to red meat after getting bitten by a Lone Star tick, which is the tick you see with the white dot on its back. And over the last several years, cases of alpha-gal syndrome have skyrocketed by almost 10,000%. And now, headline after headline, all asking the same question: how could a tick-borne illness suddenly be impacting so many people, not just people living in rural America, but in suburban America as well? And then we heard from Dr. Matthew Lau at the World Science Festival 10 years ago.
People eat too much meat, right? And if they were to cut down on their consumption on meat, then they would, it would actually really help the planet. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can kind of possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
Oh, okay. And then you start to connect the dots even more, and you find out that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation spent millions of dollars funding genetically engineered ticks, and that Bill Gates is also a major investor in lab-grown meat. And now we've got almost 500,000 Americans living with a rare tick-borne illness that makes people allergic to meat, but not the lab-grown meat that Bill Gates has invested in. You think maybe this is not a coincidence after all? Nicolas Hulscher is an epidemiologist at the McCullough Foundation. He's been talking about this for months. Nick, great to have you back. Right now, there are 79 cases of alpha-gal syndrome in Rhode Island. They've never seen that before there. And 10 states are reporting more emergency room visits for tick bites than they've ever seen before. What do you think is really going on here?
Yeah, there's a major tick problem going on, and it appears nobody's talking about it. None of the large news outlets. This is very serious. We have to remember, a new study came out a few months ago, and they literally found alpha-gal syndrome, the incidence of alpha-gal syndrome, the allergy to red meat from the Lone Star ticks, skyrocketed up 10,000% in just 10 years. And then we look to 2021 to 2024, it jumped up another 300%, another sharp increase. So something's going on. Something is driving these ticks.
Is that the left is blaming it on climate change? I know you're an epidemiologist, but is that normal with an illness that's been around for a long time, like alpha-gal, to just suddenly be everywhere at the same time?
No, we do not believe this is actually from climate change. In fact, we have to start looking at government-related or NGO-related laboratory activities, especially given that the Gates Foundation gave over $7 million to a biotech company to make genetically engineered ticks, as well as the U.S. Army released 270,000 radioactive labeled ticks into the wild in the 1960s.
Yeah, let me ask you about that. I think we've got the headline because people just don't know about this. 278,000 radioactively labeled ticks in Virginia, in Montana, including Lone Star ticks. And they wanted to do this to see how fast they could spread disease. So do you think there's a connection? Maybe they're doing this again?
It's very possible. We know they did it in the past. We know that these NGOs, Gates Foundation, are funding sorts of activities. And lastly, we have seen a peer-reviewed paper published in the journal Bioethics. Professors from Western Michigan University, they lay out that they say it's morally required to intentionally genetically engineer Lone Star ticks to spread alpha-gal syndrome as a form of moral bioenhancement to stop people from eating meat. You can't make this up. So bioethics is now masquerading, or actually bioterrorism is masquerading as bioethics now.
We have the study, by the way, this Michigan, Western Michigan paper that was published. It's bioterrorism. And then you add the Bill Gates element to this. When I first became aware that this was happening, I thought the CDC should maybe investigate. Nick, now I think it should be the FBI. What needs to happen next here?
Yeah, we need serious investigations, all hands on deck. CDC, we got to find out exactly what's driving the increase. And FBI, they got to figure out if there are any illegal bioterror-related activities resulting in this 10,000% rise in alpha-gal. We can't let this go on. We got to stop it, and we got to find out why.
Just quickly, do you think it's a coincidence that cases of Lyme disease are now setting records in states, and Pfizer, all of a sudden, what do you know, they've got this new Lyme disease vaccine?
It may not be a coincidence. It may not be a coincidence because we just look at COVID. We just look at COVID, what they were doing before the laboratory, the lab leak, and then they made billions of dollars. So, you know, would not surprise me.
Check yourself for ticks. Check your children for ticks when you come into the house. It doesn't matter where you are. This used to be something that if you were hiking, if you were a rancher, if you were on a farm, if you were outdoors a lot, you had to worry about. Now it's happening. They just found an alpha-gal tick in Central Park. Now, granted, a dog could have traveled and brought that there, but people in cities and suburban areas are now at risk. Why, we don't know, but we're not going to stop asking these questions. Nicolas Hulscher, appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.